Well, good evening, everyone. I am Bill Soloway, the president of the Philadelphia chapter of TRIO, or Transplant Recipient International Organization. And I'd like to welcome you all to our October meeting. We have a great program for you tonight, a speaker that I know very well. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce our speaker tonight. Connie Romano is a nurse practitioner and part of the heart transplant program at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania. I first met Connie after my heart transplant. She was up in recovery, and I'm happy to say she's the one, as I tell the story, who pulled my drainage tubes. And of course, as you'll hear shortly, Connie and I share a passion together, and that is bicycling. And as soon as we connected on that level, we became fast friends. And it wasn't about Bill and his transplant. It was about Bill getting back on his bike after his heart transplant, something that I never dreamt I would ever do when I was in congestive heart failure. And, thanks to Connie and the whole team, within 10 weeks, I was back on my bike riding, which certainly brought tears to my eyes. So I've asked Connie to talk about an issue that's very near and dear to my new heart, as well as it should be for all of you post-transplant patients. And that's certainly to take care of your new organ, not only for you, but to honor your donor and live in a healthy lifestyle. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Ms. Connie Romano.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Bill, for having me and for inviting me to join tonight. Hello to some of you who I care for in the transplant clinic. Nice to see you. So motivation. It's one of the things that I wanted to bring up tonight because we all need it and we all struggle with it at times. As boring as it is, I always start with a definition of whatever I'm talking about so that I'm on the right track. Motivation is the reason that one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. It's the general desire or willingness to do something. It's basically what drives us. It comes in all different forms, and sometimes we lose it, and we have to find it again, maybe even in a different form. So I just wanted to share with you what happened to me and how I lost my motivation and how I had to work really hard to get it back. And then I want to relate it into maybe some of the struggles that you've had. I've been an athlete all my life. I started as a very young age in gymnastics, went on to cheerleading and softball. I was on the track team and was a sprinter and middle distance runner in high school. And then through college and graduate school, I went back to running because it was a great form of quick exercise when you were studying and busy with school and work. And then after that, I moved on to long distance biking. I did a number of city to shore rides from Philly down to Ocean City and Atlantic City. And then I got into triathlons and I did a handful of them, both short distance and longer distance. Learned to swim in my 40s because I never had swim lessons before. So it was my lifestyle. It's what I did. It's what motivated me. Thank you, Jim. And unfortunately, a few years ago, acute on chronic back pain had me retire. I can no longer run. My cycling is only short distances now. And it really took a toll on me. And even as I recovered from the back injuries and got the pain under control, I lost my motivation. As I said, as an athlete all my life, I knew what I needed to do. I know how to work out. I know how to exercise. I know how to lift weights. But there was no motivation there to do it anymore because I couldn't do what I really wanted to do. And I'm sure all of you have been there where your health problems have limited and taken away what you wanted to do. So it took me quite a while. And I found somebody to work out with. And it's one of the reasons, one of the forms of our motivation is when we connect with somebody and we can do it with somebody. There's a sense of accountability and responsibility. You don't want to stand up your friend. So it was really challenging, but I knew I needed to do it because while I was involved in all the athletics, it was easy to keep my weight down, to stay healthy. I come from a long line of heart disease on my mom's side of the family. So I know the risks. I know what I need to do. I can't change those genes, but what I can do is to focus on the things in my control, those lifestyle modifications that I'm sure all of your providers have mentioned, keeping your weight in check, watching your cholesterol levels, eating a heart healthy diet, being active, don't smoke, limit the alcohol, all those good things. So I knew what I needed to do, but one of the things I've realized, and again, as a healthcare provider, you're not always a very good patient, and you're not always very good at recognizing what's going on with yourself. I am excellent at ignoring things and moving on. I'm the worst patient ever. But what I really realized after a little bit, as I was struggling to find this motivation and get back on track, is I was depressed over all of this. So I had to recognize that level of depression and figure out a way to work through it. One of the things that running or swimming or biking, any of those longer distances did for me is it helped me to clear my head. I could work through a problem, think things out, have that mental conversation, of something that was going on. And I had lost that as well as the physical part of it. So it really took me to recognizing the problem before I could figure out a solution to the problem. But keeping my goals in mind of remaining healthy because of the family history really helped me to do that. So knowing what you're striving for is also another form of motivation, which is really important. So that's kind of the gist of what I wanted to talk about tonight, at least for the first part of the conversation, is what motivates you and how do you get motivated? And what do you do when you take a backslide? And these things are not just about athletics, in my story they are, but it's about overall health. And for each and every one of you, that is key to keeping your donor organ healthy, to increasing the quality and quantity of your life, which is the whole purpose of transplant. And we all backslide on all things, but we have to stay focused on the goal ahead. So I was wondering if anyone had any stories, anything that my story, sparked an idea to get the conversation going about what motivates each of us. And maybe that can help the other person who's maybe struggling in a different area if they hear somebody else's story.
Yeah, so Connie, as we talked about previous, cycling for me is my vent, my stress relief. And even prior to transplant, I was very active, and, taking it out on the pedals was the whole mantra with that, right? To be able to get on the bike and just take out all your frustrations on the pedals. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. I definitely can relate to that. And, I also tell the story about how every time I would go in for my checkups after transplant, they would keep an eye on my weight. And, it was congestive heart failure. I couldn't eat a lot of foods. I had to watch the fluid intake and everything. So now after transplant, everybody's like, well, there you go, and I'm like going, ooh, so I can have a hamburger, I can have this, I can have that. And then I just went on this food binge of, and prednisone didn't help either, being ramped up on that, right? So I went on this binge, and then all of a sudden I started putting the weight on, and I was down to my fighting weight of like 195 pounds after transplant, after all the fluid came off, and, I was back to cycling. But then all of a sudden I'm putting all this stuff in my mouth and I'm gaining weight. And, I used COVID as a time to hit the reset button, because I would come in for my checkups and the weight would be creeping up, and, they would always kid with me and go, we need to put you on Weight Watchers because, you're getting a little out of control here. And I say, no, really, I got this. And, I would be watching TV at night and snacking, and, all these things that I shouldn't do. And then COVID hits and all of a sudden all my outside activities are shut down. So now I'm not grabbing a hamburger at a fast food joint or something. Now I can really, rein in all of these bad habits that I've accumulated. And, I'm happy to say that I started biking virtually. I was up to, just before the lockdown and COVID, I was up to 237 pounds, right? I'm happy to say that I'm at 195 pounds. So I've lost over 45 pounds.
Great job.
Just watching what I ate, they kept harping on me when I go for my checkups, and exercising, right? So now I'm biking virtually on a trainer with actually some of the nurses that took care of me on Zwift, this program, virtual program. So I'm doing at least 100 miles a week virtually, and then I'm doing almost 100 miles outdoors because I live right off the Delaware River and I can get on the canal trail and I don't have to worry about there being a lot of people around. So, I use that as my motivation. And of course, all the team who kept harassing me about my weight getting out of control, that always was in the back of my mind, right? That was always my motivation. So
absolutely.
So does anybody else have something they want to share? Elizabeth?
Well, those of you who know me know that I have been a big exercise fanatic for quite a while, and I love to swim, and that's, my major form of exercise, which I'm not doing now because I have nowhere to swim indoors. So, I have other things I do, like walking and weightlifting, and I just try to keep myself busy. I had a liver transplant, and I will say that because I had had 2 children and had to lose weight after my children, I knew that I had to be pretty strict with myself after my liver transplant, when I too was on prednisone for quite a while. But I would say my biggest fear in life is not being able to exercise, getting to a point where something happens to me that prevents me from being able to exercise. So I totally get it. Like your back problem, and all of our individual health issues, it's really hard. And once you get off that bike or out of that pool or away from your form of exercise, it's really hard to motivate yourself to go back to it.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Elizabeth and Bill. And I will say one of my motivators is I am, to be totally honest, so fearful of losing my mobility. I will do anything I need to do and stop doing what I need to do. I don't want to make my back any worse. I'm just shy of 50, and it scares the heck out of me that my mobility could be hampered for the remainder of my life. So it's finding those alternatives and accepting, the challenges that we've been given, whether it's a back issue for me, a liver issue, a heart issue, and they're not easy challenges to accept sometimes and work through. Yeah, Jim.
I got 2 thoughts on that. One, over the years, my knees have been a limiting factor, but I've had them both replaced at this point, along with one hip. And most recently, my wife has had a hip and now one knee, and scheduled to do another knee shortly. So we're on the verge of going back out to walking, which we haven't been doing for years because of that. But the second thing, my main motivation, and it's funny, when you have a day that you're not doing this, boy, it can be a very boring day and you can just sleep in the chair, anything. But when I get up in the morning, look at the schedule for the day, and with the volunteer work that Bill certainly has, and he didn't mention any of that, but that certainly fills his day, and mine too. So you have a lot of purpose, and that purpose keeps you going and gives you satisfaction. So those 2 factors, the physical ones, like your back you're talking about, Connie, and secondly, having a meaningful day doing something for somebody else.
Absolutely. Thank you. I wanted to bring up a few other forms of motivation that if you're struggling with something, maybe you can incorporate some of these things. So, incentives are always a wonderful thing. So, to put yourself on a 2-week diet so that, because there's a big meal and a big celebration coming up, the holidays, and you want to enjoy all the side dishes, so maybe you're a little stricter with your diet for 2 weeks before because you have that incentive coming up. If it's some weight loss because you want to get back into that favorite pair of pants again, so any type of incentive you can set up for yourself. And for me, the long-term goals, like I want to remain this weight until I'm 75. Well, that's 25 years out. That's way too long to focus on. So you need shorter goals, maybe some long ones too. And that's one of the things I did when I was running, when I started out, is I would sign up for a 5K every month. So I had something to keep me focused and motivated and to look forward to. So it's finding those incentives and helping to stay focused. I had mentioned the sense of responsibility and accountability. So it's always easier to do whatever you're doing when you have an appointment with somebody, when you make a plan, whether it's a spouse, a friend, a significant other, a sibling, and we're going to go out and we're going to meet at whatever time and we're going to walk for a half hour. You don't want to let somebody down. So that's a great way to keep yourself on track and to help stay motivated, because if you don't want to do it that day, maybe they're going to, pick you up emotionally and help keep you motivated, and you'll do the same for them in response. If you have the money to do it, you pay for a trainer, you join a gym when they all open again, where you buy new equipment. You don't want to waste your money. So that's another motivating factor too. I am working out with a trainer now to keep me on task, but I also don't want to waste my money. So, I make it to those appointments whether I feel like doing it or not. And there's definitely some days after work I don't feel like going. I'd rather sit on the couch and just watch TV for the night. But I don't want to stand somebody up and waste their time, and I definitely don't want to waste my money. I mentioned setting goals like I did with the 5Ks. Hopefully the donor dash will be back in April. I know that I've seen Bill down there in the past, and I don't know if any of you have been down there, but it's a really great, amazing event. And you don't need to be a runner to do it. Walking at any pace, they have 1 mile walks. I think you can walk the 5K too if you'd like. It's not timed. It's really just a great, exciting event. And it's something to work towards if you're not there and you want to do a certain distance. And then, of course, for all of you who are transplant recipients, honoring your donor. You guys know this better than I do. Honoring that donor and doing what is right to stay as healthy. And again, back to that quality and quantity of life, which is the goal of transplant, is always, I think would be, I'm not there, but I think that would be a good motivator if you're struggling and you're down. Think about, your donor, and that might pick you up and get you moving again. Any other thoughts or comments on motivation and things of that nature?
Well, Connie, certainly some of the things that you said that resonated with me is the accountability. And I have to admit that the weight loss portion, I had seen a lot of commercials, after COVID hit, for Noom, for weight loss, right? And I'm always a guy that I always have to make things into a game or mask things like exercise. I always have to do some kind of sport related thing, turn everything into like a game. So counting calories for me then became the game, and Noom really helped me with that because they retrained me on how to think about what I'm eating. So every day I would have to log in, I'd have to get on the scale, that would show up that number, and that's right in your face every day, right? And then it asks you to log your meals. So you have to put in all of what you ate for breakfast, and it's counting your calories and it's showing you what your caloric intake is. And then it says, okay, we want you to do X amount of steps. And of course the phone, with the app counts your steps. And I could input my cycling activities, and then you could see how many calories that you burned, right? So now this is the whole game for me, is seeing my caloric intake and my output. And, that's how I was able to do this, is be accountable to something as simple as an app on your phone, right?
Yeah.
And nobody else but that app. And that's really the secret for that and weight loss. So that's
Absolutely.
just a trick that, if you can have some kind of accountability in your life, whether it's your partner at home or somebody that you have to answer to, or an app, that really kept me in line. So,
Well, speaking of apps, have you been using the AlloCare app, and does that do the same thing as far as what you're trying to do?
yeah, so the AlloCare app, that's something that I want to help them develop. Is they don't have anything to log in meals and such, and then record any activity and everything. But I think that's certainly an enhancement for their next round of what they do. But there are other apps out there that you don't have to pay for that do a similar thing. Like Fujicate is one, and you can actually scan the barcode with your phone, and it tells you if it's a good food that you should be eating or not, and how much of it you should have or not. So again, if you can make something that is not fun for you fun, then your chances of doing it are going to be, that much better.
Yeah.
Bill, what was the name of the second app you just mentioned?
Fujicate.
Spell it. I'm hearing you, but
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's Fooducate.
Fujicate. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of these apps interface with, if you're on the Apple platform, and I'll speak on behalf of Apple, with the health app. So they all talk to each other on sharing information like your weight, your activity, and that's a really neat thing. In this case, Fujicate's asking me about tracking potassium and vitamin D, of all things. So
My Fitness Pal is another app that I used.
yeah.
You enter your weight, your height, some demographic type information, and then you can log your daily exercise for calories burned, your fluid intake, and then it has a really good glossary of the food. So, I can type in like nature made granola bar, fruit and nut bar, whatever it was, and it pops up with the number of calories, the sugar content, the protein content. So you can really help to really get a picture. And again, while I was exercising, my weight stayed where I wanted it to be. But once I wasn't as active, I really had no idea how many calories I was eating. And it was a really eye-opening, in a bad way, thing to realize how much I was eating every day. And because I wasn't expending those calories, I really had to cut back. So it let me see which foods were the highest with the added sugar and the processed sugar and things like that. And I could make better health choices on what I was going to eat the apple instead of the granola bar, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I've tried to do this numerous times, even after transplant, but to log the meals, that was like the hardest part. I was just like, I wish I could just take a picture of what I was eating and it would figure it out. But some of these apps have become so much advanced where they make it easy for you to identify what you're eating, right?
Yeah.
So I can put in oatmeal and they'll ask me, what specific brand, and they already know the calories, just like I'm reading it off the box. It's there. Mm-hmm. And if you're eating something that they don't have in their database, then they ask you to take a picture of the label, send it in, and then it becomes a part of the database. So that's become so much more advanced where it's not that painful anymore like it used to be when I first, set out to do it.
Yeah.
And another secret was a scale, right? Portion control. And I learned that right away. Some of these apps then can say, okay, well, what's your portion? So you can break it down, and I was doing everything in ounces. So, I would know what 5 ounces of chicken look like? And, you know, that really helped me in my mind because, you know, all you have to do is go to Europe on vacation and get a meal in like Paris in a cafe, and they bring you this small portion and you go, is that an appetizer or is that the whole meal, right? And you don't realize that when you come back home here and everything's oversized this and oversized that, we become so accustomed to that. And it's just like, we got to get back to the basics of not being a glutton, not eating more than really what we need.
Yeah. In addition to portion control, one of the other hidden things is all the sugar in beverages. You know, if you're drinking a Snapple or Gatorade or something like that, tons of hidden sugar. You know, when I'm with a patient and we're talking about these topics about exercise and health and things like that, one of the things I've learned over the years as a young novice nurse, you know, everything was black and white to me, you know, just don't do it. But nobody can do many things cold turkey. So the other thing is, you guys have all been through, you know, a huge ordeal to get to where you are. So you still should enjoy life. You still should enjoy, you know, dessert once in a while. And, you know, if there is an absolute favorite beverage you can't cut out, but cut back on it. I had one patient, she was doing like 3 large fountain sodas every day and then was upset she couldn't drop the weight. I was like, whoa. So, you know, we went to, how about 3 mediums for a couple weeks and then 3 smalls and then maybe get it down from there. You know, same thing if people are doing iced teas, you know, for every iced tea, do a water instead. You know, so I don't preach cold turkey, black and white anymore. You know, the American Heart Association says we all should be getting, you know, 10,000 steps per day. Well, I stopped saying that to patients as the beginning of my conversation and instead asking them how many they're getting, because almost everybody has their phone in their pocket and it has some sort of step tracker. So what I didn't realize that some people, they're not working, they're not very active, they've led a more sedentary life, they may only be getting 2,000 steps per day. So for me to say, all right, starting tomorrow, get 10,000, well, that's like asking them to climb Everest, you know, without training. So, you know, all right, shoot for 3,000 for the next week and then go up to 3,500. And look at your step counter before dinner and think about, okay, I got to get some steps in before dinner, or I'm going for a walk after dinner. You know, walk up and down your flight of stairs at home 1 or 2 extra times each day, not because you need to, but just for some exercise. So looking at things a little bit differently in that, you know, everything in moderation, small changes are going to stick better than big crash diets. Nobody's going to go out and run a marathon if they're not even walking around their block. So it's small changes, but they have to be, you have to be committed to making them. Nobody does well on a diet if they don't want to do it. If they're just doing it for their doctor, their spouse, you know, or a crash diet because they got to wear that dress for the wedding next weekend. Lifestyle changes is what you need to do. You know, I didn't cut back on red meat, you know, in a day. I was a meat and potato person growing up, you know, cutting back on those carbs, giving up bread for the most part. You know, these are things that I have done over the years as I've seen my metabolism change as I've aged, as my exercise routine has had to change. So now I realize, you know, my dinners are mostly protein and vegetables, you know, maybe a spoonful of the quinoa or the rice, rarely a pasta or a vegetable. And I don't need a bread unless it's the best bread that's ever been baked. It's just not worth the empty calories if it's not going to be good. Same thing with dessert. You know, I will have one bite, and if it's not the best piece of cake or pie, it's not worth it. I'll wait until I can get that really great pie or cake from the great bakery in South Philly, that kind of thing. So it's committing, but you have to commit to it. 10 years before I could truly say I'm making these changes on a regular basis and not cheating too often.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find this graphic, Connie, that I came across. But, you know, being a guy and being visual, I saw this one graphic that somebody put together a board that would have like an iced tea. and underneath the iced tea is a bag of sugar to see actually how much sugar is in that tea. And they did it for like Red Bull, and they did it for like a Coke. And it was just mind blowing to see, that visual of how much sugar is actually in that product. So I think, yeah, that's a very useful tool, because, we can say, oh, that's got too much sugar, but until you actually see what's in it, do you go, wow, I didn't realize.
And there are people who then become patients who have grown up on fast food and iced teas and sodas, and they don't even realize, because it's just the way it's been, that, the hidden sugars and how not good for them those beverages are. So, and I feel like cutting out a beverage, in my mind, is easier than, skipping a meal or, changing your diet completely at first. I had a friend whose husband, healthy guy, but significantly overweight. He was drinking about 3 or 4 Mountain Dews a day. He cut back to 1 a day, and he dropped 40 pounds in like 3 weeks. It was, without any other change in his diet or exercise. So the hidden sugars in those beverages are just amazing.
Yeah, that's crazy. But now to switch back over off of weight and talk more on the exercise side of things. So I am in this program where I ride virtually with a group. So if you're not there, they beat you up the next time you show up. So of course there's accountability in that, right? Yeah. So I have it in my schedule that every Wednesday night, doing this ride with this group, and also it's Friday morning. But, that really makes it real for me. And, I do it early in the morning, and I'll tell you what, it's like you were saying earlier, I was like mapping out my day while I'm exercising, all of a sudden the blood's flowing, the thought process is flowing, and I'm really starting to formulate my day while I'm doing this. And then once I'm off, I feel much better, because, there are times that you're just like, oh no, I really have to do this. And then you do it and you go, wow, I'm so glad that I did. Right. And then that's not to say that your day goes to crap then after the first phone call, but at least you have it all planned out, right? You have a game plan. But
I think it's important. I think it's important to find the time that works for you. Like, I am not an early morning exerciser. I would far rather sit down and play my flute and practice my flute at 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning than exercise. However, over the summer, when I was swimming at my local private swim club, the only time that I felt safe as a transplant recipient who was over 60 was at 8 a.m. So I forced myself to go swimming at 8 a.m. But I mean, under certain circumstances, you have to do that. But, Bill, you love exercising at that hour. That's not my favorite time.
That's all right. I have one of those stair steppers you can sit in a chair and use. I'm on it now.
Very good.
All right.
I use it when I'm on Zoom meetings, because I'm on Zoom calls easily 2-3 times a week. I'm on it now. That's why if I'm rocking a little bit.
Wonderful. Very good. I agree with you, Elizabeth. I am not one to set an alarm to get up early to exercise. My best time to exercise is after I've enjoyed my morning tea and I've watched the news or read the paper and gotten myself together, and then that's my time. But you do have to change it up. It worked well for me when I was on shift work, and I worked 12-hour shifts, so I had days off during the week. But now that I work 5 days a week, I have to fit it in the evening, and I'm making that work. And you have to figure out what works for you. Don't join a 6 a.m. walking group if you are not a morning person. You're never going to make it, or you're never going to enjoy it and accept it and move forward with it. Find the group that meets at lunchtime, or the group after dinner. You have to figure out what's going to work for you too. Don't set super unrealistic goals that you're never going to commit to or make it a lifestyle change.
Yeah, Connie, and you mentioned earlier, and we talk about this too. I certainly do my bike riding, and as I mentioned, I never dreamt that I would ever do it again, and it's all thanks to my donor. So if you look at the top tube of any of the bikes that I ride, and I ride many different types of bikes, my name is on one side of the top tube. My donor's name is on the other side. And this is a time too that when I'm exercising, when I'm out on a trail, as corny as this may sound, and some of you probably will shake your heads because you relate, I actually talk to my donor, and I say, hey, we're out here because of you, and I really appreciate this, and I want to share this trail with you. And especially when I'm on a real long climb or something, I'm like, I talk to my donor, I go, okay, we got to kick it into gear here. And I know a lot of us talk about, we not only live for ourselves, but we live for our donor. And there's no better way. We talk about worshiping your body like it's a temple, and we have extra responsibility now because we have used parts. And Jim, you were talking earlier about the knee replacements, the hip replacement. I'm just trying to figure out now how much of you is recycled.
They do talk to me as the biotic man.
So
yeah, I've been finding it difficult with the COVID. In the beginning, when it was shut down, like we kind of just stayed home and was, playing games or whatever, watching movies. And then I was like, we need to get out. So during the day, because my daughter was a senior and they didn't have school, it was shut down, we would go for walks with the dog, which was nice. We'd go, 3-4 times a week. And then we just kind of got out of the habit of it. And then I've had a couple setbacks. So it's been a little bit harder, to get out and get motivated again. So this is a good meeting for me right now to get back into it. And I would go in the evenings. I'm not a morning person either. And just go out with friends, a couple times a week. But as Bill knows, I had COVID. So it's been a setback and just slowly trying to get back into things. So.
And I think that's an important thing that you bring up. When there is a setback, sometimes you struggle to get back into it. Give yourself a break. Accept that you've had a setback, and the other, not only will it take a little bit more mental energy to get back into that routine and maybe find that motivation again, but don't expect that you're going to be able to start exactly where you left off, depending on your level of setback, whether it was just a vacation, when you overate on vacation, or you had a health issue and an illness. You have to give yourself a break. And, if you used to walk 5 miles in X number of minutes, but you can't do that right there, that's okay. Accept it, and you'll just keep working towards it again. If you can imagine having the flu and how that sets you back. Obviously, all of you guys have had bigger problems than that, and how much that sets you back and how much you get deconditioned just from, a short illness. So that's great that you're back out there, Sherry. Congratulations.
Getting there, yeah, because I've gained 20 pounds since COVID started. So that's not making me feel real well either. So
yeah, they call that the COVID-19.
Yeah, it's more than the quarantine 15.
And one of the other things is there's that Chinese proverb, fall down 8 times, get up 9. And there's no one that lives that proverb better than Sherry, because she is such a trooper. And we hope to hear more of her story at next month's meeting.
Oh, well, yeah.
Hey, no pressure, Sherry.
Yeah, no pressure at all.
Does anybody have anything else that they'd like to share? Tom, you've been really quiet, and you usually have a lot to say. So
You're on mute, Tom.
let's see if I can unmute him.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. No, I've been listening to everything everybody's been saying, and it all makes sense. My big weight loss was after I had my first open heart surgery. I dropped almost 90 pounds. And I've managed over the last 7 years, I've gained 10 pounds in 7 years, which I don't think is too awful bad. Now, my situation's a little bit different than most of yours in the fact that I'm diabetic. So I've got to watch my diet for calories and fats and things of that nature, but I can't eat any carbohydrates. I don't drink any soft drinks at all.
Mhm.
At dinner time, I might have a couple glasses of the Turkey Hill Diet green tea,
Mhm.
and that's the limit of my drinks. I can't even tell you the last time I drank soda, but I don't eat a lot of calories during the day. You know, my activity level, as Bill, you know, I've talked to you about it many times, and also Connie. I mean, I go from the time I get up out of bed in the morning until the time I go to bed at night. You know, I run my construction business. I come home. My wife and I manage our farm. I'm involved in my township. I'm running for election again this year. I'm also the OEM coordinator in our town. So I'm not a big person to sit down and watch TV for 45 minutes or an hour at night. It's just not me. And it drives my wife crazy because there's a lot of times she'll walk in here. I'll be sitting here doing different things and the TV's off. So I can't emphasize enough what you guys said earlier. It's the mindset and the management of it. You just got to pay attention to it. It's as simple as that.
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Mr. G.
The other thing, and Connie, you know this better than anybody. I mean, my biggest downfall for the last 3.5 years has been some of the side effects to the medications. You know, they've been rather harsh. And, I go to therapy sessions with Dr. Weinreeb. I've been doing it virtually since COVID started. And between him and you, Connie, it's helped me tremendously. You know, you've managed some of the medications a little bit differently,
Mhm.
and we're getting ready to make another change here very shortly.
Mhm.
That has really helped me mentally. You know, I don't have to deal with the severe headaches. I don't have to deal with all the bad nausea. I mean, there are days when I still get that stuff, but they're nowhere near like they were. So overall, it helps me manage things a lot easier.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions on the topic for Connie or any comments that they would like to add? All right. Well, I'd like to certainly thank Connie for joining us tonight and sharing information on this topic of eating right, eating healthy, and exercise. You know, get motivated. There's a lot of tools out there, as we talked about, whether they're apps, whether it's being held accountable by your spouse or partner. You know, use what you got, right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
So I also would like to thank some of our newest members, Sherry and Tom, for joining us tonight and signing up for the newsletter. This is a monthly meeting that we're having now virtually instead of meeting like we were previous. So please feel free to share this with your other transplant family and friends. The fourth Tuesday of the month at 6:30. Have them sign up to get our newsletter and stay informed. And if there's a topic that you'd like us to do some research on and get a speaker to talk about, please reach out to me and let me know. Or if you even know of a speaker on a topic that you'd like to have discussed, please send me that information as well.
Bill, let me
Yes.
add to that. All these presentations are recorded and they're available after it's over on the trioweb.org website under resources. And it's there with 120 other presentations, Connie. And so your audience here, I always say this is the token audience. So you have somebody to respond to, but there's some of them get hundreds of views. And if you pass on to your other friends, if they miss this, they can go to that website and they can see it. It typically will be posted up there by tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah. So with that, if there are no further questions, I'd like to wish everyone a happy Halloween, depending on what you're doing. It's going to be a different one this year, that's for sure.
Yes.
And I look forward to seeing you guys all next month.
Thanks, Bill.
All right.
Thank you,
Bill.
everyone.
Thank you, Connie.
Have a good night.
You too now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.